looking at this even bigger. So that was the quantum computing story. We have to connect QPUs together to make a bigger computer. We have to connect multiple quantum computers together, right, in different ways. But we've also talked about quantum memory. We've talked about sensors. We've talked about clocks. We've talked about lots of things that generate quantum encoded data. And we have to move that data around. Because to paraphrase Bill Clinton from a long time ago, it's the data, stupid. We get so enamored with processors, right? I mean, any of you, early days of PCs, well, my chip is bigger. My chip is faster, right? But is it fast enough? And then you finally say, but what are you trying to do with it, right? Where is the data? And suddenly, right, you talk about bringing processing to data. You start thinking about international networks and things like this. And the same thing is going to happen. But you can't run these quantum networking things over plain old networking wires. And just having fiber optic by itself is not sufficient. So we're going to need advanced photonics for the quantum networking. Not just the security, but for the core networking. And I think I've said photonics about 150 times. But what I really wanted you to emphasize, what I wanted to emphasize was maybe you saw the big picture of quantum computing, where we're going, why are we going, what are the current restrictions. The world's not just quantum computing. There are going to be other devices that are significant that will in time grow in volume and the need. But it's not going to happen without a very strong, a very innovative photonics industry here in Colorado and elsewhere. It's a parallel industry, right? We can both benefit in different ways. What we can do is give you requirements, if you will. This is what we need from our photonics components and sources and things like this. But I hope I gave you a little bit of an idea of the other side of the business. One maybe you didn't quite know so much about as it relates to quantum. So thank you, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to talk to you, and I'm here all day.
Thanks for the talk. I know you weren't talking entirely about quantum information, but I do find it interesting, so hopefully you're okay with questions there. You know, with a lot of the other approaches that you mentioned, there's serious limitations. You know, Josephson-Junction-based quantum computing has issues with coherence time. Ion-based has problems with scalability. You don't seem to have that. So what do you see as like the major limitation for cold atom-based quantum computing?
It's in control. I mean, basic laser control, right, and fidelity of quantum gates. So the idea is, just to kind of summarize, so when you look, and we'll use quantum computers as an idea, so you have a single qubit, which is holding your quantum information, and they're amazing things. Every time you add a qubit, you potentially double the amount of information. With 10 qubits, you can hold 1,024 pieces of information, so it just grows. By the time you have 275 qubits and everything's working well, you can have more information than there are atoms in the observable universe to compute with. And that all sounds great until things don't quite work well. So you were talking about various flavors. So superconducting, Josephson junctions technology, very old technology. People like Google and IBM and others use those. There are different flavors of doing that. They're very fast, but what happens to your qubit is it becomes chaotic. It decoheres, and that's the coherent time. So imagine you're looking, you know, I give you a photograph of a person standing in a forest, right? But with this photograph, every second, 1,000 of the pixels are going to turn black, right? And for a long time, you can look at this and say, oh, that's a person. There are some trees, okay. And then like, well, I guess that's a person. You know, I guess that's a tree. That is, the information is becoming more and more polluted because of noise coming from different sources. And the amount of time you have to look at that is the coherence time. So with superconducting, they have very short coherence time. but they do things very quickly. So you have to divide the coherence time by how long it takes to do things. And you can say, well, within a certain amount of time, I can do so many operations. So they have short coherence time, but fast gates. We have longer coherence time, but slower gates, right? But we and ions expect to have much better, with the coherence time being longer, we believe we'll be able to do error correction better with far fewer. So there are about 7 different factors. The point is that you have to weigh as you look at these things, and they go into the engineering of the actual QPUs in different ways. So, you know, they're engineering trade-offs. And for that reason, I think all of these flavors will exist. I'm not yet confident that ion trap will scale for computers, but I think they'll make really good memories, quantum memories. And they could be used in communication networks as well for repeaters. Superconducting, I think, will probably be restricted to data centers, supercomputers. I think will be very versatile in a lot of ways that some of the other ones can't be in sensors. And we're going to have to see, you know, on computing. That's a problem. So there's a mix. You can say good things and bad things about every of them. You could just yell. I'll repeat.
Thank you. I have a kind of a business strategy question because I didn't expect that co-quantum inflection is very actively working on quantum computing, so it's great to learn about this alternative. Can you elaborate on that? Because my impression had been that you guys are working on the clocks, the sensors, and the other things. So is this actually a devoted area of inflection? Or maybe it's a long-term strategy that, you know, because of the potential, you will keep some R&D in this area, and hopefully over time it can beat out the others.
So in terms of general, let me say, quantum business strategy, you should ask that question of everybody every 6 months, because things change very quickly. So cold quanta was, for the most part, let's say in the sensor market, atomic clock market, for a very long time. In 2019, with the Series A, they specifically wanted to shift into quantum computing. And that was a very rich time for quantum computing companies that were getting started. And we and others thought that we would do this, and we're still doing it, although it was a later entry. And in fact, some of the photonic approaches in the ion trap go back well over 20 years, right? They just couldn't do things with it. In the late 1990s, they had NMR-based quantum computers. They had 15 qubits, right? And things like this. So we decided to get into it. But what ultimately, and the current business climate for quantum computing, is that even though we told everybody it would take years and years and years, people are running out of patience. And investors are running out of patience on quantum computers, you know, big time investors. And so there was a spike in, let's say, VCs and other types of investments up through, let's say, the beginning of last year. And it is very, very difficult if you were a pure play quantum computer company now to get money outside of a little bit of seed funding. You know, the last thing we need, frankly, is another quantum computer company. That hasn't stopped people. But what we need is to solidify the supply chain for the approaches that look most favorable, right? And it can be in the quantum computer industry, but it's not the actual quantum computer. And that's why I was emphasizing some of the things with photonics. We are not a pure play quantum computer company, but the core, you know, what I showed you with the prism, can be used in different things. And to be very honest, when I joined this company, it was like, this is amazing, we can do all these things, but which one are we really going to specialize in, right? If you take investor money, you can't say, oh, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. They literally want to say, well, which one makes you the unicorn? Another, I don't like that term, but you know, that's the kind of focus. And so with the general downturn in the tech market, and even with a little bit of the Silicon Valley Bank, that really spooked investors quite a bit, right? Being diversified in the quantum industry is a very good thing, and being focused and to have a follow-on. So with clocks, we will enable this type of better control in the core atomic technology. We will then use that for the RF. In the meanwhile, quantum computing really, for everybody, it's a longer term R&D. So that will go into that. Innovations there will factor into it. So you have a sequential business strategy of which quantum computing is not the top of the list, right? But ultimately it will come in. And this was really when I was talking about the edge. There's no point in going after Google or AWS in a data center for quantum computers. They have more money than any startup in the world. It's change to them, right? So look beyond this next generation, and that's why we're looking at the edge, because we know computing becomes ubiquitous. And it's very reasonable to expect it, not in cell phones, but just all these places I've described. And it's a much better longer-term R&D strategy for quantum computing while you support yourself with maybe investment, but also the increase in funding from governments, Department of Defense, and so forth. So that's literally the business strategy for us and others.